long fire season well underway on the West Coast tonight. A fire tornado swallowing up forests in Northern California. Homes in danger as bone-dry land fuels the flames, and millions of people dealing with extreme temperatures. The heat dome still hovering over the Pacific Northwest, and in Canada, more than 24 fatalities from the dangerous weather. On the East Coast, a 100-degree heat index and little relief from the sun. Our Ginger Z tracking it all. In Surfside tonight, heavy rain stalling the search and rescue efforts for possible survivors as we get new reporting on the possible warning signs before the building came down. America's longest war is ending, but one American will not be heading home. Tonight, ABC's exclusive interview with the sister of a man held hostage by the Taliban. Is the government doing enough to try and get him back?
There are stones unturned, I firmly believe. And I don't think anybody can come home with their head held high until every stone has been unturned.
Move over Los Angeles. For the first time in nearly 40 years, there's a new city with the dubious distinction of the worst traffic in America. Ecstasy, you may think of it as a party drug, but tonight new studies into groundbreaking therapy using the drug's key ingredient that may help change lives for people struggling with PTSD.
What's the world like for you now?
Well, I think I feel at the moment stronger and calmer and probably having more hope about the future than I've had for decades.
And basketball legend Kareem Abdul Jabbar leading the charge for change. The Hall of Famer joins us to talk about his lifelong pursuit of social justice and the new honor awarded to the player carrying on his legacy. And good evening, everyone. I'm Kira Phillips in for Lindsay Davis tonight. Thanks so much for streaming with us. Tonight, nearly 6 days after the Surfside, Florida condo came crashing down, the painful process of searching for life beneath the rubble goes on around the clock. Heavy rain today slowed those efforts to a crawl, but still officials say at this point it is a search and rescue operation. Miami-Dade officials just late today updated us on their progress. Unfortunately, they confirmed one additional death, bringing the total so far to at least 12 people. They also announced 149 residents remain unaccounted for tonight. All of this comes as ABC News was able to confirm a letter that was sent to residents back in April, warning that the damage to the building had gotten significantly worse. And tonight, we're hearing from survivors, one who says she had been reporting issues with the building for years. Victor Akendo leads us off tonight from Surfside.
Tonight, the dangerous and desperate search, combing through millions of pounds of rubble, and late today, a 12th body recovered in Surfside.
Nobody's giving up hope here. Nobody's stopping. The work goes on, full force.
More than 200 rescuers hampered by thunderstorms and debris falling from the side of the building. They've reached the basement on the east side of the pile, but some areas are now too dangerous to access.
Find strollers and baby bottles, stuffed toys. It just brings a sense of reality to the moment.
All this as troubling new reports emerge. The Miami Herald's publishing photos from a pool contractor showing exposed rebar in the crumbling concrete at the Champlain Tower South, just 36 hours before the catastrophic collapse. That contractor telling the paper he was struck by the lack of maintenance in the lower level. And ABC News confirming a letter was sent to residents in April, warning that the damage had gotten significantly worse, that concrete deterioration is accelerating and would begin to multiply exponentially after a 2018 engineering report revealed the need for repairs. But the cost was steep. The repairs were priced at $15 million. Residents asked to pay anywhere from $80,000 to $336,000 for the repairs. And now, a new lawsuit. Survivor Racer Rodriguez describing the collapse, saying the building swayed like a sheet of paper. She had been reporting issues in the building for years.
There were clear, not just warning signs, but alarm bells ringing for years about the state of this condo, and the appropriate steps weren't taken to protect human life.
The Condo Association releasing a statement saying it can't comment on pending litigation, adding, "Our focus remains on caring for our friends and neighbors during this difficult time." A structural engineer inspecting the Champlain Towers east and north, deeming them safe.
We're inside the parking garage for the Champlain Towers North, the sister building. One of the biggest complaints we heard about the South Tower, the one that collapsed, was that their garage always flooded. Well, it has been raining on and off all morning long, and as you can see here in this garage, it is bone dry.
And we're now hearing more harrowing accounts from the residents of the South Tower. Eric DeMora worked from home on the 10th floor. He was about to leave his girlfriend's house last Wednesday night when she convinced him to stay over. His unit, now part of the rubble.
That saved my life.
The building's doorwoman frantically called after the collapse.
She said, the building collapsed. What do you mean the building collapsed? Eric, people are dead. I can't believe it. I still can't believe it.
Victor Akendo joins us now. So, Victor, today we learned that there will be a federal investigation into the collapse. So what other resources will they be deploying to get to the bottom of what went wrong?
Kira, the NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, they look at building failures. They're sending a team of 6 scientists and engineers to come here and gather information. And then on Thursday, President Biden and the First Lady, they will be here in Surfside. They're going to meet with first responders and, of course, the families. Kira?
Well, we look forward to hearing more from the investigations that are out there. Victor, thank you so much. And for more, we bring in ABC's Stephanie Ramos, who's also on the ground there in Surfside, Florida. Stephanie, you've been talking to the families of the missing. Tell us more about your conversations and how they are still holding out hope.
Kira, much of that hope is turning to desperation. These families are tired of waiting, but many of them are now coming to grips with the reality that their loved ones may not have survived that collapse. But it's a really tough situation here. A lot of these families are surrounded by other families who are grieving and waiting for news about their loved ones, and all of that really compounds the suffering. Kira.
And Victor Akendo just told us, as you heard, about those alleged warning signs before the building collapsed, including that letter to residents about concrete deterioration. How are family members and residents responding to that, Stephanie?
Well, some of them have said that they just can't even fathom or imagine that an inspector or an engineer would be so negligent and have such a disregard for lives, for the lives that lived in that tower. And they are glad that these letters, the letter from just a few months ago in April and that report from 2018, they're glad that they're coming to light now. But they're enraged. They're upset that this even happened and this could have possibly have been prevented.
Which leads us to questions about what comes next within these investigations and lawsuits. What do you know? What have you heard?
Well, we definitely know that this investigation is going to take some time, especially because officials say that the immediate priority is to search and rescue. It's that operation to get those people out of there. And the collapse investigation remains secondary, even though they are starting to put together all of that evidence and try and figure out how this could have happened. As far as the lawsuits, we know 2 have been filed, and I can imagine that many more will come forward. Kira.
And we'll follow it all right along there with you. Stephanie Ramos, thanks. Now to the extreme heat, scorching large portions of the country tonight. In Seattle, temperatures so hot, highways buckled from the heat. And the heat and drought fueling dozens of wildfires, including the lava fire in Northern California, forcing evacuations. The East Coast is also dealing with temperatures north of 100 degrees tonight. ABC's Janae Norman has more on that.
Tonight, millions sweltering as that record-breaking heat invades the Northeast. At noon today, it felt like 105 in Boston.
That is dangerous heat, and certainly that heat advisory is staying in effect.
And 102 in New York City.
We are island girls, and this is hot.
Philadelphia declaring a heat emergency.
The heat is so strong already, and it's only 8 o'clock in the morning.
Bringing air-conditioned city buses into communities to serve as mobile cooling centers.
I was concerned about the heat and the seniors, and that was what was on my mind, myself.
Heat kills more people than any other kind of extreme weather. And with temperatures this high, don't forget about your pets.
Keep them out of the sun just keep them safe, just the same as you would think of yourself being out there.
Meanwhile, in the West,
it feels like Armageddon.
After breaking records and buckling roadways in Seattle, the heat moving inland, hundreds treated for heat-related illnesses. Officials in Spokane warning of possible rolling blackouts. And the dry conditions are fueling multiple fires. The lava fire near the California-Oregon border forcing families to flee after exploding to more than 13,000 acres overnight.
And our thanks to Janae. Well, for more on how long this extreme heat may last, let's bring in ABC's chief meteorologist, Ginger Z. Ginger, please tell us, will there be some relief?
I feel so bad because I'm standing here and I'll tell you, I'm almost cool. And next to the Great Lakes up here in northern Michigan, we are one of the few places. Yeah, it is. It's gorgeous, but it is not what the rest of the country is feeling, that is for sure. I'm going to show you why, right? So we've got this big blocking pattern that's been set up. That's why the Pacific Northwest crushed and smashed their all-time records, and it's still drifting over, which I'll show you. But that big trough in the middle, that's where the cooler air is sitting. And then that high, that ridge on the East Coast, that's why we saw broken records today for the daily records from LaGuardia to Hartford to Newark. Will we do it again tomorrow? Possibly. Wilmington, Delaware, up the coast of Maine's got heat advisories back to Syracuse, so Scranton, you'll feel like 98. The heat index in New York will be 102, same for Boston. So temperatures in the upper 90s easily one more day, but you know how you break heat? You get storms, and that's what happens when a front comes through. So tomorrow from State College up through Augusta, Maine, please be on alert, but really it's Albany, much of the state of Massachusetts, southern New Hampshire, and Vermont. This is your time when you start to get severe storms, not just damaging wind, but an isolated tornado, absolutely possible this time of year. So we need to check in on the West Coast because we know that it was such a rough go from Seattle to Portland, Medford, Eugene. All those all-time records being smashed days on end, but it has drifted east. And so the Northern Rockies, including Missoula, with 102 for an actual high on Wednesday tomorrow, Boise at 103, 100 for Burns, and 94 Reno. So the excessive heat warnings, and that means, of course, drier, hotter, means worse for fire danger. Kira?
And Ginger, natural disasters, we talk about this all the time, have deadly consequences, of course. And as Janae just mentioned, the numbers show that more Americans died from heat than any other weather event last year.
Yeah, I mean, heat doesn't get the headline because it doesn't happen as immediately. It doesn't happen with debris everywhere. And so we don't get the pictures of it. It is kind of the forgotten, but the number one. And so you can see this is weather fatalities of 2020, but also just so you know, this paired with the 30-year and 10-year average. I think the 30-year there, you can clearly see that heat takes the cake. Then you look at 10-year average, and it's still up there with all the others, the tornadoes, the floods, the lightning. And I like to remind people that while it doesn't get the headline that way, death by heat, it is something that we will continue to see more of. We will see climate refugees because we know one thing about climate change, and that is that it will give us longer, more intense, more prolonged, and really frustrating heat waves, much like what we just saw. You can't attribute just one, but we spoke to a climate expert today, Kira, that told us this might have been a 1 in 1,000 year event in normal times, but with climate change, it's more like a 1 in 100 year. On the route that we're going, it could become a 1 in 10 year event where we smash all-time records by 9 degrees. So that's something to think about as we come away and start to cool off from this first heat wave of the season.
Well, we also appreciate you for just keeping climate change on our radar. We need to be talking about it on a regular basis, Ginger. Thank you so much.
You got it.
Now to the latest on the pandemic and the highly contagious Delta variant spreading across the country. Los Angeles is now recommending masks in public indoor spaces, even for people who are vaccinated, to help contain the spread. And there's some encouraging news from an early study of the Moderna vaccine finding it effective against those variants of concern. ABC's Marcus Moore has the latest.
Tonight, with mounting concern over the highly contagious Delta variant, Los Angeles County now urging its 10 million residents to once again wear masks in indoor public spaces, vaccinated or not.
I did take off my mask a couple weeks ago, but now with the new variant coming out, I'm I'm hearing of people getting COVID again, and I'm getting a little bit nervous.
The highly contagious Delta variant now making up half the new cases sequenced in LA County. Dr. Anthony Fauci saying the CDC is not changing its mask recommendations because the vaccines appear to work against the Delta variant.
They may understandably feel that they want that extra degree of precaution, and that is just fine. But the overall countrywide recommendation of the CDC has not changed. We're going to monitor the variant very carefully, as we do literally on a daily basis, to see if things change.
Tonight, there is more promising news. The vaccine works against variants. Early data from Moderna shows the vaccine is likely to hold up against variants of concern, including the Delta variant, now in 49 states. An outbreak at an Illinois church teen summer camp is now linked to nearly 100 cases of the virus. Officials say the camp did not check the vaccination status, and masks were not required indoors. Meantime, Texas Children's Hospital is tracking more cases of the Delta variant in children under 12 who cannot yet get the vaccine. To protect them, doctors say it is critical that everyone else is fully vaccinated.
This Delta variant is especially adept at infecting partially vaccinated individuals. So those adults and adolescents who may think that one shot out of 2 is enough, think again.
And Kira, tonight, the average number of reported COVID-19 cases is now averaging about 10,000 a day, and that is the level needed to continue to control the virus. But ABC News surveyed state dashboards and found that at least 24 states are opting to no longer offer daily COVID updates, and that's concerning to experts who are trying to track the spread of COVID-19, especially in light of that new, more contagious Delta variant. Kira.
Marcus Moore, thank you. And as we get ready to mark an end to the longest war in our history and American troops speed up their withdrawal from Afghanistan, there is a family living in tremendous fear. Fear that the last known American hostage held by the Taliban, a man that they love very deeply, may be left behind. That family now in an exclusive interview with our Ian panel with a message to President Biden.
America's longest war is ending. The troops finally leaving Afghanistan. But one man won't be heading home. He's the last American hostage held by the Taliban, and there are grave concerns he'll be left behind.
I feel that if they leave a man behind that served this country for us for 6 years, I would think that how could they sleep at night? You know, I mean, how are they sleeping at night knowing that they left a U.S. citizen behind, a U.S. veteran? I mean, I can't imagine. If they're pretty cold if you know, they're not doing their job, because that's their job.
Mark Frericks is a U.S. Navy veteran. He was kidnapped in January last year. A civil engineer, he traveled regularly to Afghanistan on construction contracts. According to U.S. officials, he was abducted in Kabul after being tricked into attending what he thought was a business meeting. He's believed to be held captive by the Taliban's Haqqani network, a hardline wing of the movement that's captured U.S. and British citizens throughout the war. Almost 100 foreigners have been kidnapped over the years. Some have been sadly killed, but more are held for ransom and released. With most American military and special operations teams expected to be out by early July, Frericks' family fear it'll soon be too late to free him at all. Speaking exclusively to ABC News, his sister Charlene says the U.S. will lose its leverage once the troops leave and should have made more efforts to rescue him in the 17 months he's been held captive.
We can't do anything. We're relying on the U.S. government to get my brother home. How can you not find somebody? I mean, I just don't get it.
Taliban officials privately acknowledged that Frerick was being held by them, telling U.S. Special Representative for Afghanistan Zalmay Khalilzad last fall details about the condition of his health in captivity, which was also shared with Frerick's family.
He's said that he is healthy and well, and that's pretty much it. He's healthy and well, and he has had some high blood pressure issues, and so he's seen the doctor for that. He's taken medication for that.
During a visit to the White House by Afghan President Ashraf Ghani last week, the White House was asked if it had a message for Mark Frerich's family.
The president's message is that he will continue to fight every day of his presidency to bring Americans home who are detained overseas, whether it's in Afghanistan or any other country around the world. Again, we will have a diplomatic presence on the ground. We will continue to work closely with the government with security support, humanitarian support, and there needs to be a continued political process, ongoing negotiations.
But Ashraf Ghani said the issue was never discussed in his meeting with Biden. The administration's now negotiating with neighbouring Pakistan, believing its intelligence services will be able to put pressure on the Haqqani network to free Frerichs. Most of their hostages were held there, but Pakistan denies having that type of influence. Since America's deal with the Taliban, the violence has escalated in a growing climate of fear and chaos. The Taliban are advancing, taking over more and more strategic districts as the Afghan military abandon bases and outposts. America's deal with the militants has brought no peace for the country and no hope for Frerich's family. And when it's just a U.S. diplomatic presence remaining, with few means to leverage concessions from the Taliban, Mark Frerich's fate will become ever more uncertain.
You have the power to bring my brother home. Please get my brother home safely. We are relying on you. He's a good man. He deserves better. He does not deserve to be left behind. He's an American citizen. And I know that you would not leave an American citizen behind. So please, I beg you, do everything you can to get my brother home.
Ian Pannell for ABC News.
When we come back, quite a scare when lightning appears to strike this car. What happened to the people inside? NBA Hall of Fame legend turned social justice icon Kareem Abdul Jabbar joining us after the NBA hands out its first award named in his honor. And the illegal drug that some researchers say could help create a new therapy helping people deal with post-traumatic stress. Stay with us.
With so much at stake, so much on the line, more Americans turn here than any other newscast. ABC News World News Tonight with David Muir.
We have made it through another week together.
America's #1 most watched newscast across all of television.
Admit it, these days, what you need to know
seems to change just about every day.
What is it that you really want to know, need to know?
To help you not just get through your day,
but to make the most of it. Feel smarter.
Feel better.
Feel happier.
Well, how about a third hour of Good Morning America in the afternoon?
GMA 3, what you need to know. Lunchtime at 1 Eastern, 12 Central and Pacific on ABC. It's all about you.
Robin Roberts, George Stephanopoulos, Michael Strahan. Wake up with America's #1 most watched morning show. ABC's
Good Morning America.
The world may feel out of your control, but your happiness doesn't have to be. Learn the secrets to happiness. Listen to the 10% Happier podcast, free on Apple Podcasts.
ABC News honored winner for the second straight year with the Edward R. Murrow Award for Overall Excellence in Television. ABC News, America's #1 news source. Friday nights, 9/8 Central. True crime, cinematic, real-life drama, stunning, the unthinkable. Follow the clues. The Hunt. True crime. 2020. Friday nights, 9/8 Central on ABC.
The reality is our country can collapse from within.
You see the white power movement on the march. Klansmen and neo-Nazis, skinheads, it's meant to incite war.
From the KKK to Oklahoma City to Charlottesville, the new documentary event special.
We just need to start talking about race.
Homegrown hate, the war among us.
This is a real wake-up call.
Streaming now on ABC News Live.
Now, when it matters most, the straightforward facts. ABC News is America's #1 news. Good Morning America, #1 in the morning, 9 years running. World News Tonight with David Muir. #1 in the evening with America's most watched newscast. 2020, the #1 news magazine on Friday nights. The View, the #1 daytime talk show. And ABC News Live, #1 in streaming news. ABC News is America's #1 news.
The drug ecstasy, not just a party drug, but now a potentially groundbreaking study says researchers believe MDMA could have real medical benefits, even helping people cope with the worst of traumas. Maggie Rulli has all the details.
It was absolutely incredible. It felt like all the chains and all the darkness had been stripped away, I guess, for the first time in decades.
Dave Pounds says he remembers the moment his world changed forever.
It was quite remarkable.
It was after just one therapy treatment with MDMA.
And I remember thinking how everything seemed brighter and warmer, and that was fantastic.
Better known as the party drug ecstasy, E or Molly. It's often called the love drug, popular at raves and festivals, but still considered a Schedule I illegal drug in the U.S., outlawed in the 70s, even for medical use.
We must wage what I have called total war against public enemy #1 in the United States, the problem of dangerous drugs.
But some researchers never stopped believing in the power of the love drug and continued to study MDMA for decades in hopes to prove it could have real medical benefits and was not just a way to get high. For Dave, he says a groundbreaking research trial with MDMA helped him come face to face with one of the most painful memories of his past.
What was that moment for you that caused this trauma that you got stuck in?
I was 12, and it was during the weeks. Mum was working at a restaurant, and Dad, who's a professor of X-ray astronomy, was giving a lecture. Mum got a lift home from the restaurant from a colleague, and she invited him in for a cup of tea.
He tells us his story, how he heard his mother being murdered from his bedroom upstairs.
There were footsteps up the stairs, and my bedroom door was opened, and all I could hear was panicky breathing, really fast, panicky breathing. I carried on pretending to be asleep. He left and went back downstairs, and that's the last thing I heard for probably about an hour and a half, and I hadn't moved, I hadn't even blinked. I was frozen, petrified with fear.
It was only when his father came home from work that Dave says he walked downstairs and saw what had happened to his mother.
She'd been stabbed many, many times, as I remember. Blood was everywhere, and she'd been raped. So the last image of my mum was that.
For years, he buried the memory.
I remember being in bed for months at night, sort of crying myself to sleep, but apart from that, it wasn't discussed, and we just got on with it.
Dave says he tried to cope and seek help, but as he got older, things only got worse.
And I just started drinking more and more and ended up binges for weeks and weeks.
It wasn't until he says he hit rock bottom in 2019 that he found psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy. And that's when Dr. Ben Sessa entered his life.
Good to see you again.
Yeah, you too.
Dr. Sessa was leading an MDMA-assisted therapy trial in the United Kingdom.
This medicine that allows you to go to forbidden, avoidant, painful thoughts.
Now, Sessa's the chief medical officer at Awaken Life Sciences, the UK's first provider of psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy available to the public.
What is it like to look up there and see that side?
It's so validating and gratifying after years of this being a kind of weird fringe subject. This is no longer that. This is cutting-edge neuroscience. This is cutting-edge medicine. This is the future of psychiatry.
But what is psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy? It's a treatment that uses traditional talk therapy paired with hallucinogenic drugs like psilocybin, which is the active ingredient in magic mushrooms, LSD, ketamine, and MDMA, also known as ecstasy. Researchers believe these drugs, under the close watch of trained doctors and therapists, may be able to alter a patient's state of mind to possibly help them face the root causes of trauma. They found that MDMA acts as a central nervous system stimulant, increasing chemicals like serotonin and oxytocin in the brain, often called happy or love chemicals, while also decreasing activity in the amygdala, the part of the brain that processes fear.
So what we're doing is we're cleverly combining these two very disparate fields, psychopharmacology and psychotherapy, which are usually at total opposite ends of the spectrum. We're combining them into a single intervention with drug-assisted psychotherapy.
Dave says he remembers his first night of MDMA therapy vividly.
And I felt really warm and calm, really super sharp, not intoxicated at all, nothing like drinking alcohol. And I just felt safe. Quite quickly, an image came to mind, which was of me in my bedroom the night of the murder. But instead of the bedroom being dark, it was warmly lit. I was sat up in my bed in my pajamas, and the murderer was at the end of my bed. And I just very calmly looked at him and said, "I'm pretty sure I know what you've done downstairs, and I'm pretty sure you could kill me. But I want you to know that I'm not frightened of you anymore." Even more bizarrely, Mum came into the room. Next image was all three of us having a hug. I mean, I don't know where that's come from, but it was almost like I was making peace with the whole event.
This is why people don't progress in typical therapy or with typical medications so well, because they can only get so far with their therapy, and they eventually hit this brick wall where it's like, I'll talk about anything, but I ain't talking about that. And then with the MDMA on board, I think of it, Dave, as like a sort of life jacket or bulletproof vest to wear into battle with your trauma, because it just, in some ways, it's not that magical. It simply allows you to do the psychotherapy that you should have done decades ago. Did it sort of feel like that? You could finally had permission to go there and talk about those memories?
Yeah, and whether that was conscious or subconscious, I'm not sure.
Currently, Awaken offers therapy with ketamine, which is legal in the UK. But Dr. Sessa is pushing for the legalization of more psychedelics.
When you get your leg mended, it's mended. You're discharged, you never see them again. We don't tend to do that in psychiatry. Why not? Well, I think we can. And I think psychedelics offer us that opportunity.
According to the World Health Organization, there's been a 13% rise in mental health conditions and substance use disorders in the last decade worldwide. In the United States, the results from 2 phase 3 90-patient MDMA-assisted therapy clinical trials conducted by the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies were recently published. That group is in the process of seeking full FDA approval for MDMA-assisted therapy as a new prescription treatment for PTSD.
We found a statistically very persuasive difference between MDMA and placebo, and the placebo group actually also got the therapy. So it's not just comparing to a sugar pill, it's comparing to psychotherapy together with a sugar pill.
The results of these studies found 67% of people who had MDMA-assisted therapy no longer qualified for a PTSD diagnosis after 3 sessions, compared to only 32% of people who got traditional talk therapy alone. And 88% of the people with MDMA-assisted therapy had clinically meaningful reductions in PTSD symptoms.
We're hopeful that by the end of 2023 that we'll be able to start offering this treatment in clinics in several locations in the U.S.
But some experts caution that this trial was relatively small, reminding people MDMA is not a cure-all drug, and during treatments, it must be used in a control setting.
It's important that, as this study is showing, that MDMA was given in the setting of therapy, and that the role that it plays is really in facilitating a therapy that's very productive for the person, as opposed to being a magic pill that you take and suddenly all your problems go away.
For Dr. Sessa, he says the biggest hurdle now is public perception.
I'm going to give the war on drugs a massive amount of credit for one thing, for very, very successfully poisoning the minds of 50 years worth of intelligent, erudite people to have an instinctive knee-jerk reaction that if a drug is used recreationally, it is therefore dangerous and useless and addictive and couldn't have any possible positive benefits. That is just wrong. They are not useless, they are extremely useful, they are extremely safe, and they could be superb medicines for patients.
How do you think we make that flip from having people think about MDMA as more than a party drug?
Oh, such a big question, such a good question. I mean, so many ways. I mean, the way that I'm doing it is through the science and the medicine and the collecting the data and the demonstrating the safety and efficacy of these tools. And then comparing and contrasting that with our traditional treatments in psychiatry, which are failing our patients in so many cases.
While the research and debate continues, Dave says this is the best he's felt since he was 12. What's the world like for you now?
Well, I think I feel at the moment stronger and calmer and probably having more hope about the future than I've had for decades. I don't feel as though I could class myself as being cured, but you know, if something does trigger the anxiety, it tends to feel a lot less strong and I tend to recover more quickly. So, you know, in that sense, I'm certainly more resilient.
Yeah.
Which is fantastic, really fantastic.
Still ahead here on Prime, the construction worker arrested for allegedly stealing a Picasso masterpiece. Walmart says it will revolutionize insulin access with deep discounts. We have all the details. And there's a new city on top of a list that no one wants to really lead. So which city has the worst traffic in America? We will take a look at by the numbers. But first, our tweet of the day. Sad news out of Wimbledon. Serena Williams is out.
I know what happened, and I'm not guilty.
Why the fascination with criminal trials? Figure out what's really out there.
She revealed she had murdered his family.
I know in my heart they did this.
It's the time of suspicion.
The ending's really tough.
You don't know whether truth is going to be difficult to find unless you try to find it.
The reality is our country can collapse from within.
You see the white power movement on the march. Klansmen and neo-Nazis, skinheads, it's meant to incite war.
From the KKK to Oklahoma City to Charlottesville, the new documentary event special.
We just need to start talking about race.
Homegrown Hate, the war among us.
This is a real wake-up call.
Streaming now on ABC News Live.
Admit it, these days, what you need to know
seems to change just about every day.
What is it that you really want to know, need to know?
To help you not just get through your day,
but to make the most of it. Feel smarter.
Feel better.
Feel happier.
Well, how about a third hour of Good Morning America in the afternoon?
GMA 3, what you need to know. Lunchtime at 1 Eastern, 12 Central and Pacific on ABC. It's all about you.
Assault on the Capitol, the ABC News original, exclusively on Hulu, now streaming. With so much at stake, so much on the line, more Americans turn here than any other newscast. ABC News World News Tonight with David Muir.
We have made it through another week together.
America's #1 most watched newscast across all of television.
The world may feel out of your control, but your happiness doesn't have to be. Learn the secrets to happiness. Listen to the 10% Happier podcast, free on Apple Podcasts.
Robin Roberts, George Stephanopoulos, Michael Strahan. Wake up with America's #1 most watched morning show. ABC's
Good Morning America.
ABC News honored winner for the second straight year with the Edward R. Murrow Award for overall excellence in television. ABC News, America's #1 news source.
We turn now to a definite downside of our return to public life as pandemic restrictions are lifted, and that's traffic. It's on the rise, and for the first time in decades, Los Angeles no longer has the most congested roads in the nation. Here's a look by the numbers. Nationwide, daily commuter traffic dropped nearly 50% in the spring of 2020 compared to the year prior, according to the Texas A&M Transportation Institute. That was the lowest congestion level since 1997. Residents of urban areas spent on average 84 hours in traffic in 2019, but it fell to 41 hours during the pandemic. And here's another change. The New York, Newark area had the worst traffic. Residents spent 56 hours in gridlock in 2020. Boston had the second worst, dethroning LA from the top spot where residents spent 46 hours in traffic in 2020, tied with the San Francisco, Oakland area. And while we here in New York complain about our commutes, our overseas colleagues reminded us that New York still ranks 102nd for the world's worst traffic. Moscow, Mumbai, and Bogota take that honor, according to TomTom. And we still have a lot to get to here on Prime, with tens of millions of people expected to hit the roads. News of some gas stations reportedly running out of gas. And sources telling ABC News about a new federal inquiry into Rudy Giuliani. It's looking into whether he lobbied for a foreign nation. But first, to look at our top trending stories on abcnews.com.
We will guide you through it all tonight. We have made it through another week together.
Give me a big hug, Griffin.
We tell all our patients how much they're loved. We hold their hands.
David, we're showing our love and support for all the ICU staff.
They're the heroes in this.
Now, when it matters most, the straightforward facts. ABC News is America's #1 news. Good Morning America, #1 in the morning, 9 years running. World News Tonight with David Muir, #1 in the evening with America's most watched newscast. 2020, the #1 news magazine on Friday nights. The View, the #1 daytime talk show. And ABC News Live, #1 in streaming news. ABC News is America's #1 news.
The world may feel out of your control, but your happiness doesn't have to be. Learn the secrets to happiness. Listen to the 10% Happier podcast, free on Apple Podcasts.
This is a story of two brothers, one a hero and the other a monster.
He was cold, hateful,
The vicious killer.
We have recovered 2 bodies.
He was handsome like a big teddy bear. He was just our friend. It is frightening what he was thinking the whole time.
You never expect so much terror to happen in such a beautiful place.
The true crime special, Evil in Eden. Friday night at 9/8 Central on ABC. ABC News honored winner for the second straight year with the Edward R. Murrow Award for Overall Excellence in Television. ABC News, America's #1 news source.
This is GMA3, what you need to know. GMA3.
A third hour of Good Morning America in the afternoon.
It's all about you. Lunchtime on ABC.
The reality is our country can collapse from within.
You see the white power movement on the march. Klansmen and neo-Nazis, skinheads, it's meant to incite war.
From the KKK to Oklahoma City to Charlottesville, the new documentary event special.
We just need to start talking about race.
Homegrown Hate, The War Among Us.
This is a real wake-up call.
Streaming now on ABC News Live.
Friday nights, 9/8 Central. True crime, cinematic, real-life drama, stunning, the unthinkable. Follow the clues. The Hunt. True crime. 2020. Friday nights, 9/8 Central on ABC.
The most powerful stories of our time, anytime. Nightline.
The painstaking search entering day 6. More than 200 rescuers on top of the pile at any given moment. More victims identified, dozens more still unaccounted for, leaving families in agony.
It's been very heartbreaking and very touching because there's a lot of folks who have been experiencing some unbelievable pain.
Workers racing around the clock, powering through 12-hour shifts in treacherous conditions. One worker falling 25 feet to the rubble below. The torrential downpours threatening efforts. Meanwhile, we're hearing from a resident of Champlain Towers South who narrowly escaped the tragedy. Eric Jamora telling ABC's Victor Okendo he was supposed to be home Wednesday night when his girlfriend convinced him to stay over.
We don't control anything, and I know that more than ever. But it was her decision for me to stay. That saved my life.
Federal authorities continue to examine the wreckage for clues into what led up to the partial collapse. The Wall Street Journal publishing a letter it says was sent by the condo board president to residents back in April, warning that $15 million in significant repairs were needed and that the building had deteriorated since that 2018 report.
Walmart is getting into the insulin business with a considerable savings for shoppers. The company launching Rely On Novolog. An analog vial retails for about $73 and a Flex pen sells for around $86. That's up to 75% cheaper than other brands for the uninsured. Approximately 34 million Americans live with diabetes. Walmart says about 14% of its shoppers are living with the disease.
A new federal probe of Rudy Giuliani's lobbying efforts, this time in Turkey.
The Justice Department inquiry into Rudy Giuliani is separate from the criminal investigation into Giuliani's activities in Ukraine. The Justice Department is examining now Giuliani's representation of a Turkish businessman, Reza Zarrab, and whether Giuliani's efforts to pressure the Trump administration to drop a criminal case against Zarrab went too far. A representative for Giuliani could not be reached for comment, but the former mayor has previously denied wrongdoing.
Afraid of lightning? Look away. A frightening scene on a highway in Waverly, Kansas. In the midst of heavy rain, suddenly a car is struck by lightning. It appears to take a direct hit. A father, mother, and children were inside the car, including a baby. Fortunately, no one was hurt.
Facebook's market value is officially more than $1 trillion. This after a judge ruled that complaints by the FTC and more than 40 states failed to prove Facebook is a monopoly.
Greek police report recovering 2 paintings of Picasso at a Mondrian nearly a decade after their 2012 theft from the National Art Gallery.
The Spanish artist donated the piece called Head of a Woman to Greece in 1949. Officials say the piece, found outside Athens, would have been impossible to sell as it had an inscription by Picasso on the back saying, "For the Greek people, a tribute by Picasso."
Now to the upcoming 4th of July weekend. It's shaping up to be the busiest travel period since the start of the pandemic. Tens of millions of Americans will be hitting the roads amid gas shortages and rising prices at the pump. Here's more with ABC's Chief Business and Economics correspondent, Rebecca Jarvis.
Tonight, with millions gearing up for that long-awaited post-pandemic road trip, they're digging deeper into their pockets for gas money. The national average for a gallon rising this week to $3.09 a gallon. On the West Coast, it's $3.81. And some stations are reportedly running out of gas due to a shortage of tanker truck drivers.
While the fuel is there may not be enough tanker truck drivers to deliver it as fast as Americans are filling up. The good news is there's plenty of fuel flowing. It's just a matter of time before stations that have lost supply of gasoline have another delivery made.
AAA says there are more families traveling by car this year than there were in 2019 before the pandemic even started.
It just proves that the road trip is back, stronger than ever, and we expect that trend to continue through the end of the summer. Despite higher gas prices, people are just wanting to travel, and they're doing it.
And Rebecca Jarvis joins us now. Rebecca, so any tips for how to avoid the worst of the travel crunch? COVID is over. It's a sign.
Well, Everybody's out now, Kira. That's the good news for the economy. The bad news is it's going to be a painful trip in your car if you leave at the wrong time. Thursday and Friday afternoon between 3 and 6 p.m. That is what Gas Buddy predicts will be the worst time to hit the road. Sunday, smooth sailing. So if you want to drive on Sunday, great. If you're leaving and returning on Monday, Gas Buddy again says to leave early. Aim to leave early. I know that's harder, sometimes easier said than done, but do it if you can.
Absolutely. And, you know, it really is good news that people do want to travel. They want to get out and travel. It is a sign that, you know, we are getting back to normal and people are getting vaccinated. But then you pull into the gas pump and you see how high those gas prices are. What do you think? Do you think they'll still go up?
They're going to go up, at least for the next couple of days and even weeks. And a lot of this, Kira, will also be dependent on the weather. Hurricane season. If there's a big hurricane in Texas or Louisiana, that can really push prices higher. In places like California, they very well may see some of the highest prices for gas on record there over the summer. But overall, what you would expect, and this is really what we've been seeing, is when you go from using almost no gas to using a lot of gas because everyone is using it and trying to get out at the same time. That is why you see these price spikes. It becomes that word inflation, and the biggest question about inflation right now, Kira, is it temporary? That is still what our Federal Reserve believes, that this is all temporary and that prices overall on gas and groceries and everything else are going to start to moderate as people become more accustomed to the new normal. Kira?
Well, the new normal for us is we are taking a family bike trip through Maine for vacation. So there you go. We don't have to worry about gas.
No gasoline.
Rebecca Jarvis, thanks so much. Now to the First Lady, Dr. Jill Biden, and her first Vogue cover, giving insight into her life in the White House, how it's affected her marriage, and juggling it all as she continues to teach. ABC's Janae Norman has more.
The First Lady appearing on her first Vogue cover. GMA getting an exclusive first look as Dr. Jill Biden pulls back the curtain on her life in the White House, saying, "I want the White House to feel comfortable. It's like my beach house, where you feel like you can just come in and your bathing suit is sandy, but it's okay to sit down on the chair. I want people to feel that way, that they're comfortable, that it's their house, not like, oh, I can't touch this."
The reason that she's an inspiration, I think, is, you know, she's embraced her role with both hands, and she's also kept her role as a teacher. You know, she's extremely inspiring as someone who can multitask with a smile on her face and seems to make everything possible. And there's a sense of optimism and joy in everything that she does.
Since President Biden took office 6 months ago, the First Lady has crisscrossed the country for speaking events, saying she never takes her role for granted. "When I became Second Lady, I always said I will never waste this platform. And now I have a bigger platform, and there's so much to do. There is so much to do." Dr. Biden also juggling her career as an English and writing professor.
She is the First Lady to have a job outside the home. And being First Lady is a full-time job in itself. But to Dr. Biden, who has often said, teaching is not what I do, it's who I am. She came into this role of First Lady saying, I'm going to continue to teach.
But their busy schedules are a challenge. President Biden telling Vogue, "I miss her. I'm really proud of her. We have to figure out a way, and I mean this seriously, to be able to steal time for one another." The First Lady agreeing, saying they try their best to have dinner together. "It's just part of the day that we set apart, and we still light the candles, still have the conversations, still put the phones away."
All right, they still light the candles. Love that. Thanks, Janae. Now, as more and more parts of the country continue to reopen, some of our favorite pastimes are also returning, like the NCAA College World Series in Nebraska. ABC's Kaylee Hartung traveled to Omaha to show us all the excitement.
We're rising and shining in the Cornhusker State. Nebraska's sprawling farmland, home to nearly 4 times more cows than people, with natural wonders and one man-made, this quirky art installation. Yes, they call it Carhenge. Rebounding from the challenges of the pandemic, they're now living the good life.
No land
landlocked state has more water running through it than Nebraska. There are nearly 80,000 miles of river to navigate here, including the Elkhorn River. Tubing and Adventures was already struggling when COVID hit.
The water was over our head, and we got wiped out.
Historic flooding in 2019 made floating the river impossible. And when 2020 brought more uncertainty for Brock Barron, his loyal customers were there to help.
It was pretty tough. All the unknowns, that was the tough part of the pandemic. There was a lot of support and, people just reaching out, providing donations to us to help us bounce back.
People who love this place, people who wanted to make sure that they'd be able to come back here.
Yes, there's some very passionate people that love Tubing and Adventures and are part of our TNA family.
And Baker's Candies is making life sweeter here.
Our chocolate is Nebraska's thing.
When the pandemic shut down the state's largest candy outlet, Todd Baker and his family started selling their gourmet chocolates online for the first time. A boom for business.
We were able to send it direct to our customers, and actually, for that very reason, 2020 ended up being a record year for us when it was all said and done.
Young entrepreneurs here getting creative too.
This particular facility that we're in right now is the Fairdale Village Marketplace.
With help from the Omaha Economic Development Corporation, transforming refurbished shipping containers into affordable storefronts.
OEDC is just a living, breathing, working model of an infrastructure for another Black Wall Street. They own property and they're making it accessible to people to come in and do business who have never done business before.
During the pandemic, the Fair Village Marketplace waiving rent for its tenants to help keep their small business dreams alive.
And hopefully be able to grow their business. Hopefully we'd like to see one day they get so big they move out, and then we'll bring some new entrepreneurs into it.
And when the pandemic forced Crescent Moon Ale House to close its doors, it was reliance on an old classic that saved business.
Even though it was the pandemic, people still wanted to have their Reuben fix and get their Reuben sandwich and all the other things that went along with it.
Omaha claiming to be the birthplace of the Reuben sandwich. The team at Crescent Moon perfecting the recipe.
There's a lot of things that we do slightly differently to build our Reuben. You have all the flavor profiles and they all meld together to make, one great sandwich.
To make a great sandwich, you need high-quality meat, and Just Good Meats in Omaha delivers the best.
When you think of Nebraska, you think of beef, and here at Just Good Meat, we have the best beef.
When the pandemic reached its peak and stores ran out of supply, Just Good Meats met the demand.
We're hoarding meat. They were coming in here like it was toilet paper, and we felt like we were really essential on that part because we wanted to help everybody we could.
And now they're joining us in saying,
Rise to shine, Nebraska!
Okay, my floor director, Mickey, and I are very hungry for a steak right now. Before we go tonight, the image of the day, that rainbow behind surfers in Bondi Beach in Sydney, Australia, where residents are, for the most part, only allowed to leave their homes for essential reasons due to a COVID cluster the officials are trying to contain. Well, those restrictions are set to remain in place until at least July 9th. Exercise outdoors in groups of 10 or fewer is allowed. Wonder what's at the end of that rainbow. Well, it's the end of our show for this hour. Stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. Thank you so much for streaming with us. And coming up in the next hour, the dangerous heat gripping both coasts and why finding shade may be connected to your wealth and race. Britney Spears' sister speaking out for the first time about the pop star's fight to end the conservatorship.
Now, when it matters most, the straightforward facts. ABC News is America's #1 news. Good Morning America, #1 in the morning, 9 years running. World News Tonight with David Muir, #1 in the evening with America's most watched newscast. 2020, the #1 news magazine on Friday nights. The View, the #1 daytime talk show. And ABC News Live, #1 in streaming news. ABC News is America's #1 news.
The most powerful stories of our time, anytime. Nightline.
Friday nights, 9/8 Central. True crime, cinematic, real-life drama, stunning, the unthinkable. Follow the clues. The Hunt. True crime. 2020. Friday nights, 9/8 Central on ABC.
Admit it. These days, what you need to know
seems to change just about every day.
What is it that you really want to know, need to know?
To help you not just get through your day,
but to make the most of it. Feel smarter.
Feel better.
Feel happier.
Well, how about a third hour of Good Morning America in the afternoon?
GMA 3, what you need to know. Lunchtime at 1 Eastern, 12 Central and Pacific on ABC. It's all about you.
I know what happened, and I'm not guilty.
Why the fascination with criminal trials? Figure out what's really out there.
She revealed she had murdered his family.
I know in my heart they did this.
It's the time of suspicion.
The ending's really tough.
You don't know whether truth is going to be difficult to find unless you try to find it.
The reality is our country can collapse from within.
You see the white power movement on the march. Klansmen and neo-Nazis, skinheads, it's meant to incite war.
From the KKK to Oklahoma City to Charlottesville, the new documentary event special.
We just need to start talking about race.
Homegrown hate, the war among us.
This is a real wake-up call.
Streaming now on ABC News Live.
Hello, everyone. I'm Kira Phillips. Thanks so much for streaming with us. We are monitoring several developments here at ABC News this hour. Sources telling us former President Donald Trump's attorney, Rudy Giuliani, is being investigated over Turkish lobbying, now facing a federal inquiry. This news coming as the Justice Department also has an ongoing inquiry from the criminal investigation into Giuliani's activities in Ukraine. An attorney for Giuliani could not be reached for comment, but the former New York City mayor has previously denied any wrongdoing. A generational investment is what President Biden called the need to pass his big-ticket infrastructure plan. The president traveled to Wisconsin today in hopes of selling voters on the economic benefits of the package. He said the plan would create millions of new jobs and emphasized that it would benefit everyone, regardless of party. A dozen drug manufacturers and distributors accused of fueling the nation's opioid epidemic face a jury for the first time Tuesday during opening statements at what could be the most consequential opioids trial so far. New York and two of its largest counties are seeking to hold multiple corporations responsible for the deadly epidemic, accusing them of contributing to a public nuisance. Well, it's now been nearly 6 days since that tragic building collapse in Surfside. As the death toll increases, search and rescue crews are determined to find the dozens of people still unaccounted for. And in a press conference today, the Surfside mayor still keeping hope alive. ABC's Victor Akendo is in South Florida.
Tonight, the dangerous and desperate search, combing through millions of pounds of rubble, and late today, a 12th body recovered in Surfside.
Nobody's giving up hope here. Nobody's stopping. The work goes on, full force.
More than 200 rescuers hampered by thunderstorms and debris falling from the side of the building. They've reached the basement on the east side of the pile, but some areas are now too dangerous to access.
Find strollers and baby bottles, stuffed toys. It just brings a sense of reality to the moment.
All this as troubling new reports emerge. The Miami Herald's publishing photos from a pool contractor showing exposed rebar in the crumbling concrete at the Champlain Tower South, just 36 hours before the catastrophic collapse. That contractor telling the paper he was struck by the lack of maintenance in the lower level. And ABC News confirming a letter was sent to residents in April, warning that the damage had gotten significantly worse, that concrete deterioration is accelerating and would begin to multiply exponentially after a 2018 engineering report revealed the need for repairs. But the cost was steep. The repairs were priced at $15 million. Residents asked to pay anywhere from $80,000 to $336,000 for the repairs. And now, a new lawsuit. Survivor Racer Rodriguez describing the collapse, saying the building swayed like a sheet of paper. She had been reporting issues in the building for years.
There were clear, not just warning signs, but alarm bells ringing for years about the state of this condo, and the appropriate steps weren't taken to protect human life.
The Condo Association releasing a statement saying it can't comment on pending litigation, adding, "Our focus remains on caring for our friends and neighbors during this difficult time." A structural engineer inspecting the Champlain Towers east and north, deeming them safe. We're inside the parking garage for the Champlain Towers North, the sister building. One of the biggest complaints we heard about the South Tower, the one that collapsed, was that their garage always flooded. Well, it has been raining on and off all morning long, and as you can see here in this garage, it is bone dry. And we're now hearing more harrowing accounts from the residents of the South Tower. Eric DeMora worked from home on the 10th floor. He was about to leave his girlfriend's house last Wednesday night when she convinced him to stay over. His unit, now part of the rubble.
That saved my life.
The building's doorwoman frantically called after the collapse.
She said, "The building collapsed." "What do you mean the building collapsed?" "Eric, people are dead." I can't believe it. I still can't believe it.
And our Victor Akendo continuing to follow that story for us. Now to extreme heat from coast to coast, the Pacific Northwest shattering high temperature records and excessive heat warnings and advisories are in effect for much of the Northeast. ABC's Marcy Gonzalez reports from Los Angeles.
Dangerous heat waves hitting both coasts.
It feels like Armageddon. It really does.
The Pacific Northwest sweltering with the hottest temperatures ever recorded.
I hate the heat. It is so hot.
Portland hitting 115 degrees Monday. That's 42 degrees hotter than the average for June, shattering the city's all-time heat record for the third consecutive day.
Very incredible numbers out there. Something we've never seen here in Western Oregon or in southwestern Washington.
Some parts of Washington state reaching 118 degrees Monday, the highest temperature the state has ever recorded, and even hotter than it's ever been in places used to brutal temperatures like Las Vegas.
It's rough when you're not used to it.
Hot and dry conditions fueling at least 4 dozen wildfires in the West. The so-called lava fire in Northern California prompting evacuations. And on the East Coast,
the heat is so strong already.
Heat emergencies declared from Philadelphia to Boston.
And our thanks to Marcy Gonzalez. Well, where there is shade, there is, of course, relief from extreme heat. And with temps soaring to 115 in parts of our country right now, we need that cover that can save lives. Tonight, a new study tells us America needs 30 million new trees to combat shade disparity. And it urges officials to think more about where they need to plant trees and plant them now. National Geographic writer Alejandra Baranda, author of Nat Geo's latest cover story, The Shady Divide, How LA's Urban Tree Canopy Reveals Hidden Inequities. She joins us now on what she discovered. Alejandra, tell us what you found out.
Hi, thanks so much for having me. We went on this adventure throughout Los Angeles to look at where there was shade that could help people cool down during really hot heat wave events like the ones we're having right now. And what we found was really clear. In wealthier, often whiter neighborhoods, there were a lot of trees. Sometimes as much as 40% of the sky above you would be covered with trees and tree cover. And in the poorer, often Black and brown communities, particularly in South and South Central Los Angeles, there were very few, if any, trees at all. In some of the neighborhoods we looked at, there were less than 10%. There was less than 10% cover, sometimes as little as 2 or 3%.
So these differences that you found and this economic inequality that shows up in the tree canopy, why is that?
There's a long history of urban planning decisions and at the state, city, and federal level that feed into this. One of the things that we looked at really closely was the history of redlining, which were these policy decisions that started in the 1930s in which the federal government literally drew red lines around some neighborhoods and made it harder or impossible for people to get federally backed housing loans in them. And that started off this cycle of disinvestment in a lot of parts of the city that had been redlined. And those have really clear effects that we can see even today. It affected whether trees got planted, whether trees got cared for, all other kinds of decisions that led to the shape of the city that people live in now.
And so how does that affect people in those specific areas, that disparity? How does it impact their lives?
Yeah, so there are really clear effects that we can see today primarily on heat, right? So shade cools down our bodies. You all know this. If you stand under a tree, you're going to feel a lot cooler than if you're standing in the direct sunshine. And that has effects for cities as well. So if you shade a black road, if you shade a concrete building, it's going to stay cooler and help the whole area around it stay cooler. So there are really big temperature differences in some cases between these neighborhoods that have a lot of trees and shade and those that don't. In Los Angeles, it can be a couple degrees Fahrenheit during a heat day like this. In Portland, Oregon, actually, it has one of the biggest disparities, over 10 degrees Fahrenheit difference between neighborhoods that were graded A in the redlining we passed and those that were redlined.
And trees obviously take time to grow, right? So what can be done in the interim to help get neighborhoods that you profiled specifically some relief from this heat, and heat that can be deadly?
Yeah, so I think what you were just talking about in the previous segment is really important, right? Heat is the deadliest natural disaster we deal with in any given year in the U.S. People are really hurting during these kinds of events. And so anything you can do to help cool people down is really important. And there's a really crucial racial disparity as well. Older Black folks in these hotter neighborhoods are often, in many cases, twice as likely to die during a heat event than older white folks. And so what we do now really matters. So planting trees is going to be great in 20 or 30 years. And in the meantime, we have to do things like what the city of LA is looking at right now, which is adding more bus shade structures at all of the bus stops, or many of the bus stops across the city, looking at how to add shade sails and use architecture and urban design to give people more places to be cool and comfortable during really hot events and even on regular days, in order to help people stay safe and healthy.
So after you wrote this article and discovered all the various facts and information, what was your first reaction when you heard about a city like Portland, Oregon, experiencing temperatures of 115 degrees?
Yeah, I mean, I think what's in us right now is just a really clear example of what we're going to see even more of as climate change accelerates further and gets to be even more of a big problem right now. This is a really clear moment for us to take and help everyone get through this particular event safely, and then think really hard about how we're going to design our cities and design our policies in order to keep people safe and healthy in a future that is only made hotter and more intense with climate change.
Alejandra Baranda with National Geographic, thank you so much for your time tonight. Nat Geo is part of the Disney family like ABC News, so you can get the July issue anywhere. You can buy magazines, read Alejandra's report. You can also go to natgeo.com. Now to the latest on the pandemic and the highly contagious Delta variant spreading across the country. Los Angeles is now recommending masks in public indoor spaces, even for people who are vaccinated, to help contain the spread. ABC's Marcus Moore has the latest.
Tonight, with mounting concern over the highly contagious Delta variant, Los Angeles County now urging its 10 million residents to once again wear masks in indoor public spaces, vaccinated or not.
I did take off my mask a couple weeks ago, but now with the new variant coming out, I'm hearing of people getting COVID again, and I'm getting a little bit nervous.
The highly contagious Delta variant now making up half the new cases sequenced in LA County. Dr. Anthony Fauci saying the CDC is not changing its mask recommendations because the vaccines appear to work against the Delta variant.
They may understandably feel that they want that extra degree of precaution, and that is just fine. But the overall countrywide recommendation of the CDC has not changed. We're going to monitor the variant very carefully, as we do literally on a daily basis, to see if things change.
Tonight, there is more promising news. The vaccine works against variants. Early data from Moderna shows the vaccine is likely to hold up against variants of concern, including the Delta variant, now in 49 states. An outbreak at an Illinois church teen summer camp is now linked to nearly 100 cases of the virus. Officials say the camp did not check the vaccination status and masks were not required indoors. Meantime, Texas Children's Hospital is tracking more cases of the Delta variant in children under 12 who cannot yet get the vaccine. To protect them, doctors say it is critical that everyone else is fully vaccinated.
This Delta variant is especially adept at infecting partially vaccinated individuals. So those adults and adolescents who may think that one shot out of 2 is enough, think again.
Well, for the first time in more than a decade, we heard pop star Britney Spears' passionate testimony in court. Now her sister, Jamie Lynn Spears, is talking for the first time about her sister's claims that her conservatorship is abusive. ABC's Janae Norman has more.
Jamie Lynn Spears backing her big sister for the first time, speaking publicly, supporting Britney Spears' petition to end her controversial conservatorship.
I support my sister. I love my sister, always have, always will, as long as she's happy.
The 30-year-old Zoe 101 star saying she resisted speaking publicly about the matters that sparked the Free Britney movement until her sister spoke out first.
Maybe I didn't support her the way the public would like me to, with a hashtag on a public platform, but I can assure you that I've supported my sister long before there was a hashtag, and I'll support her long after.
The show of solidarity comes just days after Britney Spears pled for a judge to end the conservatorship the 39-year-old megastar called abusive and says has controlled her finances and her life for more than a decade. Her shocking courtroom allegations comparing her conservatorship to sex trafficking, saying she's been exploited and embarrassed by those in control. Spears testifying she's not allowed to ride in a car driven by her boyfriend or make her own decisions about birth control, marriage, or having more children.
I just want to let you guys know that I am fine. I'm the happiest I've ever been in my life.
And saying she hasn't been honest about being okay. Saying, I've lied and told the whole world I'm okay and I'm happy. I've been in denial. I've been in shock. I am traumatized. But now I'm telling you the truth, okay? I'm not happy. I can't sleep. I'm so angry. It's insane.
Hey, ho, ho. Your conservatorship has got to go.
Attorneys for Spears' father saying she could have asked for the conservatorship to be dropped for years, but Spears saying she didn't know that was an option, raising questions about her former legal counsel.
I'm so proud of her for using her voice. I'm so proud of her for requesting new counsel, like I told her to do many years ago. My sister knows I love and support her, and that's the only person I owe anything to.
And thanks to Janae for that. Still to come, the dramatic raging river rescue fueled by a tropical storm and breaking the dugout ceiling. She was only 10 when she dreamed of being a back girl for the New York Yankees, but she was turned down with a patronizing letter. Well, she finally got her wish 60 years later.
Now, when it matters most, the straightforward facts. ABC News is America's #1 news. Good Morning America, #1 in the morning, 9 years running. World News Tonight with David Muir, #1 in the evening with America's most watched newscast. 2020, the #1 news magazine on Friday nights. The View, the #1 daytime talk show. And ABC News Live, #1 in streaming news. ABC News is America's #1 news.
The most powerful stories of our time, anytime. Nightline.
This is a story of two brothers, one a hero and the other a monster.
He was cold, hateful.
A vicious killer.
We have recovered 2 bodies.
He was handsome like a big teddy bear. He was just our friend. It is frightening what he was thinking the whole time.
You never expect so much terror to happen in such a beautiful place.
The true crime special, Evil in Eden. Friday night at 9/8 Central on ABC. Friday nights, 9/8 Central. True crime, cinematic, real-life drama, stunning, the unthinkable. Follow the clues. The Hunt. True crime. 2020. Friday nights, 9/8 Central on ABC.
Admit it. These days, what you need to know
seems to change just about every day.
What is it that you really want to know, need to know?
To help you not just get through your day,
but to make the most of it. Feel smarter.
Feel better.
Feel happier.
Well, how about a third hour of Good Morning America in the afternoon?
GMA 3, what you need to know. Lunchtime at 1 Eastern, 12 Central and Pacific on ABC. It's all about you.
I know what happened, and I'm not guilty.
Why the fascination with criminal trials? Figure out what's really out there.
She revealed she had murdered his family.
I know in my heart that he did this.
It's the time of suspicion.
The ending's really tough.
You don't know whether truth is going to be difficult to find unless you try to find it.
The reality is our country can collapse from within.
You see the white power movement on the march. Klansmen and neo-Nazis, skinheads, it's meant to incite war.
From the KKK to Oklahoma City to Charlottesville, the new documentary event special.
We just need to start talking about race.
Homegrown hate, the war among us.
This is a real wake-up call.
Streaming now on ABC News Live.
We're tracking several international headlines at this hour. 35 sudden deaths have been reported in a Vancouver suburb in Canada, possibly due to extreme heat. Local authorities say the causes of deaths not yet determined, but they are responding to an increase in calls since the beginning of the extreme heat, with temps in some parts reaching 117 degrees. Unfortunately, Environment Canada warns the heat wave will continue for the coming days. First responders in Mexico attached themselves to a rope to rescue a truck driver who became trapped after Tropical Storm Enrique caused a river to overflow. The trapped truck driver jumped into the strong current and thankfully managed to be pulled to safety. We are not going anywhere. Those were the words of Israel's new foreign minister after inaugurating the country's embassy in the United Arab Emirates. This is the first Israeli embassy in the Gulf state. The Israeli foreign prime minister also stressed the need for peace. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken says that the U.S. will continue working with both nations to create a more peaceful, secure, and prosperous future for all the people within the Middle East. Well, earlier this evening, the NBA announced that the Portland Trail Blazers, Carmelo Anthony, was awarded the NBA's inaugural Kareem Abdul Jabbar Social Justice Champion Award. The new award recognizes a current NBA player for pursuing social justice and equality for marginalized communities, something Abdul Jabbar has made a life mission way before his days in the NBA. It is my pleasure to have six-time NBA champ and Hall of Famer Kareem Abdul Jabbar with us tonight. So great to see you, Kareem.
Nice to talk to you. Thank you.
Well, this inaugural award, named in your honor, going to 10-time NBA All-Star Carmelo Anthony. Tell us about him and what it means to you to see NBA stars like him advocating for social justice.
Well, you know, Carmelo hasn't just started doing this. You know, he started his foundation about 15 years ago, and he was just trying to figure out ways he could help his community overcome some of the obstacles that really affect communities of color. And he's been at it ever since, and he hasn't stopped for an instant. He talked about his community in Baltimore, New York, or down in Puerto Rico. It doesn't matter. He's always been an activist and looking to do good things. And we had a discussion about it with the other people that joined me on the selection committee, and Carmelo was very easily the overall winner.
Well, Kareem, when you were a child, I remember the murder of Emmett Till really made an impact on your heart. It galvanized your early desire to engage in social justice efforts. But you took a lot of heat for your activism when you were playing ball, like when you boycotted the 1968 Olympics, particularly. Remind folks what people said to you, Kareem, and how it made you feel at that time.
Well, you know, at the time of the 1968 Olympics, I was very upset for a number of reasons. Number one, Dr. King had just been assassinated. Number two, the chairman of the American Olympic Committee was a man named Avery Brundage, and he was a gentleman who told the Jewish athletes on the U.S. Olympic team that they couldn't compete in 1936 because it would annoy Mr. Hitler. And I just didn't see myself working with someone like him and getting along with him and doing my best performing for the Olympic team that was under his direction. So I had to step away.
And you also kept speaking out despite all the hate that was spewed your way, and you continued to act on social justice issues both during the NBA, your career, and after, before, during, and after. Why did you keep going? Why did you keep speaking out, not give in?
I think I'm just standing on the shoulders of the people that I admired. Jackie Robinson, Bill Russell, Muhammad Ali. You know, I liked them. I liked what they were doing. They made me proud to be American. And they had nothing against America. They just had a lot against injustice. And I had to agree with that.
Well, it's incredible now, after you did receive so much criticism, that decades later, the NBA has an award with your name on it, honoring your activism and that of current players. What does that tell you now?
Well, it tells me maybe I'll be appreciated for being consistent.
Just like your basketball game.
Pardon me?
Just like your basketball game.
Yeah, you know, I had to annoy a whole lot of teams that were my opponents. So, you know, I guess I got used to it.
Well, we saw a surge in activism by NBA players in the wake of last year's murder of George Floyd, and some of those players got some backlash like you did, Kareem. What do you say to these athletes who want to engage, but they also don't want to alienate their fans?
Well, I just want to tell them that they have to understand that in order to approach people, you have to approach them with respect and patience. You can't just tell them that you're angry about something and expect them to understand. You have to take the time that it takes to build a bridge of understanding with someone and explain your side of an issue that is really important. When we do that in America, we get things done very quickly. And I know that because that is our way of doing things, that we can eventually overcome in this situation.
So, you know, I just thought of something else, going back to 1968 and when you became this advocate and really stood up for what you believed, and seeing all the protests that happened and all the advocates out on the streets for social justice after the death of George Floyd. What similarities or differences do you see, or what caught your attention thinking about 1968 versus now?
Well, I think the similarity between 1968 and now is that a lot more Americans understand what's going on in a lot more communities. So what they saw happen to George Floyd, Black Americans have been complaining about those situations for a couple hundred years. When most Americans got a chance to see it and watch the film, they understood that they had missed out on a very terrible truth, and that they had to do something about it. And, you know, when I saw the Black Lives Matter protests last summer, and a whole lot of people who were not Black people taking part of it, I was reassured that maybe we might just bridge this gap and achieve true peace and equality in America. And I hope that's what everybody is working on.
Amen to that. Well, I want to ask you about this public service campaign that you took part in with the NBA, encouraging COVID-19 vaccinations. But we haven't seen a lot of current players do that, Kareem. Do you think more players should get vocal about vaccinations, given the impact that COVID has had on Black Americans?
Well, I would hope that they would encourage people to go talk to doctors or talk to people that they respect, their family members or medical workers that they know are legit, and ask them if the vaccination is going to work or if it isn't, and give people the information and let them make their choice.
All right. And by the way, before I let you go, you signed a basketball for my husband about 15 years ago. I want you to know that basketball is in the room of our twins, so we think about you all the time and the history that you made.
Well, I'm honored, and don't sell it. It's worth a lot of money now.
Oh, good. Ooh, I better make sure we don't take it outside with the hoop then. NBA legend.
You don't want to wear it off. Yeah?
Well, you know what I'm going to do? I have your number now. I'm going to call you for another signed ball.
Okay, we're going to be watching for that.
You got it. NBA legend Kareem Abdul Jabbar, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time. We salute you, Kareem.
Great talking to you.
All right.
Great talking to you.
Finally, tonight, we bring you the story of a Yankee fan whose big swing paid off 60 years later. Here's our Lindsay Davis.
This is Gwen Goldman from Newtown, Connecticut, proudly holding two letters written 60 years apart. Gwen is a lifelong Yankees fan, and when she was just 10 years old, she wrote the Yankees a letter asking if she could be a Batgirl. This is the letter she got back. Dear Gwen, while we agree with you that girls are certainly as capable as boys, I am sure you can understand that in a game dominated by men, a young lady such as yourself would feel out of place in a dugout. Gwen kept that letter all this time, and 60 years later, Gwen's daughter got the idea to send it back to them. This time, the response was much different. Dear Gwen, a woman belongs everywhere a man does, including the dugout. It is not too late to reward and recognize the ambition you showed in writing that letter to us as a 10-year-old girl. Gwen arriving at Yankee Stadium.
Oh my gosh, please!
Her name right on the locker. Her own jersey and hat, a thumbs up, she's ready. And on the field, wiping away tears. The first pitch. Game on.
Thank you, Gwen.
Watching from the dugout, bringing the baseballs out to the umpire. Tonight, Gwen on never giving up.
It was worth writing that letter. It was worth having that hope. And even if you didn't get it at first, you just keep on going.
And apparently she was giving players tips as well. Lindsay Davis, thank you so much for that fabulous story. That's our show for tonight. Stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. I'm Kira Phillips. Thanks so much for streaming with us.